What if I told you that sleeping in the wild among bears and wolves could be completely safe without firing a single shot? Imagine an endless prairie or dense forest where darkness hides hundreds of hungry eyes watching your every move. Native Americans honed the art of nighttime survival over centuries, turning nature itself into an invisible fortress. They did not build stone walls or rely on steel locks, yet they slept more peacefully than many modern city dwellers. Watch the video to the end to learn how the ordinary smell of smoke and properly arranged branches saved the lives of entire tribes, as well as the secret that allowed them to sense the approach of a beast from hundreds of meters away. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of the Indians, which allowed them to manipulate the senses of animals. For a predator, the world is first and foremost a map of smells, and indigenous peoples knew how to rewrite this map to their advantage. They knew that strong aromas scare wild animals much more than the sight of weapons. Hunters deliberately fumigated their camps with certain herbs, creating a safety barrier. Smoke from the fire was the first and most important line of defense. Native Americans used cedar or sage wood, whose scent has natural repellent properties. This thick smell masked the scent of the human body. The beast could not accurately determine the location of its prey because of the thick veil of odors. Even if the predator was very close, it could only smell smoke. For most forest dwellers, the smell of smoke is associated with a forest fire. This is the most terrible enemy in the life of any animal. A sleeping person signaled mortal danger to the predator on an instinctual level. Special attention was paid to treating clothing and sleeping areas with smoke. Fabrics and skins were soaked in the campfire so thoroughly that the person literally smelled like ashes. This created the effect of no living creature being in the camp. Indians also used the excrement of other large predators to mark the territory around the camp. This was a way to assert their rights to the land in front of other animals. Upon detecting the scent of a stronger rival, the wolf preferred not to take any chances. It simply bypassed the camp, choosing a safer route. It was a complex game of dominance and self-preservation instincts in the wild. In this game, humans always remained one step ahead of the forest dwellers. Knowledge of natural chemistry replaced modern chemical repellents for the Indians. Every plant in the forest had its own important defensive function. Masking their scent helped even during long journeys across open terrain. Predators became accustomed to the smell of smoke and began to associate it with power. They understood that behind the smoke was a creature capable of controlling fire. This evoked a natural sense of deep respect and fear in the animals. Tribes often carried special pouches with strong-smelling herbs on their belts. These herbs were activated by body heat and created a cloud of aroma. This protection worked even when the fire went out for some reason. The Indians trusted the aromas of plants more than the sharp tips of their arrows. The smell of pine needles and cedar also helped repel various small pests. This made sleep deeper and more peaceful for every member of the tribe. No outside noises could disturb a person's breathing rhythm. The Indians slept feeling like part of the great and wise forest. Do you think this use of scents can be considered more effective than modern gadgets? Share your opinion in the comments. We are very interested to hear your point of view. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on other unique facts. Are you ready to learn the truth about how teepees were arranged for maximum security? Great Plains tribes, such as the Lakota and Cheyenne, never placed their dwellings randomly. Each camp was designed as a single defensive mechanism against external threats. Each teepee protected its neighbor, creating a dense and reliable wall. The circular layout of the camp created an enclosed space, protected on all sides. Inside the circle were the tribe's most valuable resources and horses. This arrangement minimized the number of directions from which a predator could attack. The outer ring of dwellings served as a kind of living shield for the people. The entrances to all dwellings always faced the center of the common circle. This meant that any movement outside the camp was immediately noticed by the guards. Predators, faced with such dense construction, felt trapped. They rarely dared to enter the settlement, fearing organized resistance. Particular attention was paid to choosing a place to spend the night, taking into account the terrain. The Indians preferred high ground with a good view in all directions. It was important to choose a place that was protected from cold winds and excessive moisture. This allowed people to feel comfortable and safe. The wind played a key role, as it could carry the smell of the camp to wolves. Or conversely, it could warn people in advance of the approach of a large animal. A properly chosen location allowed the movement of air to be used as a natural alarm system. Nature itself told people where a potential threat might come from. Inside the dwelling itself, sleeping places were arranged in a strict and logical order. The head of the sleeper was always directed toward the center, closer to the warm hearth. The feet were placed at the outer edge of the teepee, where it was coolest. This allowed a person to jump up instantly at the first alarm. The heat from the fire in the center not only warmed them, but also blinded the animals. Nocturnal predators are afraid of bright light that hits their pupils directly. The light curtain inside the dwelling made people invisible to those outside. It was simple physics that saved lives for many centuries. Predators fear organized groups and clear geometric shapes in nature. The structure of the camp was a clear signal of their collective strength and will. A lone traveler in the forest was easy prey for a pack of hungry wolves. But a circular camp became an impregnable fortress for the animals. The Indians understood that order in the camp was the key to long-term survival. Each member of the tribe knew their place and their duties in guarding it. Women and the elderly were located in the most protected parts of the common settlement. Warriors were always closer to possible points of breach of the outer border. Ready to learn what natural motion sensors the Indians used to detect the enemy? In the next chapter, I will reveal the secrets of sound alarms made from simple branches. This method allowed them to hear the footsteps of an animal hundreds of meters away from their dwelling. You've probably never heard of this unique secret, even though it has saved the lives of entire families and tribes for centuries. Native Americans managed to turn their environment into a sophisticated and almost foolproof early warning system. They created an invisible protective perimeter around their camp from dry branches, leaves, brushwood, and bark fragments. Any creature attempting to approach the camp unnoticed inevitably made a characteristic crunching sound that could not be confused with the natural sounds of the forest. In wooded regions, especially among the Iroquois, strips of dry bark were used as the main element of protection for dwellings. They were laid out in a checkerboard pattern on all paths and approaches to the camp, carefully covering possible roots. The weight of even a small animal caused the bark to break with a sharp, dry sound. In the silence of the night forest, such a crack carried far, reflecting off the trees and instantly attracting the attention of sleeping people. This noise deprived the predator of its main advantage, the element of surprise. Most wild animals, hearing the sound of their own approach, preferred to immediately retreat into the darkness. They understood that they had been spotted and that the element of stealth was lost. The Indians knew the psychology of predators very well and skillfully used the animal's fear of exposure to prevent an attack. Sometimes a broken branch was enough to prevent an attack. Another important element of the security system was the dogs that lived with the tribe. These animals had incredibly sharp hearing and sense of smell, far surpassing human capabilities. The dogs were the first to sense the approach of a bear, wolf, or coyote by smell, ground vibrations, and subtle noises. They would signal with a low growl or heavy breathing, which instantly woke the tribe's warriors without causing unnecessary panic. The Indians highly valued their four-legged helpers precisely for guarding their nighttime peace. The dogs were distributed around the edges of the camp, forming a living and mobile cordon against forest predators. They knew their territory, reacted to the slightest changes, and were infinitely devoted to their owners. In case of danger, the dogs were ready to defend people to the last, not retreating even before a stronger enemy. Without their help, survival in the wild prairies and forests would have been much more difficult and dangerous. In addition to domestic animals, the Indians closely observed the behavior of all wild birds. A sharp or unusual cry from a night owl, a sudden flapping of wings, or an alarming caw served as a clear signal of real danger. People knew how to literally read the forest, recognizing the meaning of every sound in the nighttime silence. If the forest suddenly fell silent and an eerie quiet descended, it meant that a large and dangerous predator was nearby. Small rodents also played the role of living indicators. Their restlessness, sudden movements, or sudden disappearance from their usual places indicated the presence of a large cat or other predator. The Indians lived in complete harmony with the biorhythms of the creatures around them, picking up on the slightest deviations from the norm. It was not just observation, but deep cooperation with nature for the sake of preserving life. The use of such simple and ingenious methods made spending the night in the wild as predictable and controllable as possible. People did not simply sleep. They remained an active part of the complex forest ecosystem. They were sensitive to changes in the behavior of birds, animals, and even insects. The surrounding world itself became a guardian of those who knew how to listen to and understand it. Before going to sleep, every hunter would check the condition of their noise traps around their teepees or temporary shelters. It was a strict ritual passed down from father to son for many generations. A mistake in the placement of dry branches or bark could cost not only the hunter's life, but also that of his entire family. Therefore, the creation of a crunchy alarm system was treated with the utmost responsibility and respect. Like this video if you think that such natural alarms are more reliable than any modern gadgets. Your support helps us find and share even more amazing facts about the lives of Native Americans. We appreciate every viewer who is interested in the history, wisdom, and survival skills of ancient cultures. What you are about to learn will change your perception of the meaning of a nighttime campfire. Fire served not only as a source of heat, but also as a powerful psychological weapon. For people in the past, a campfire was part of a defense system, not just a convenience. It affected not only the body, but also the behavior of all living things around the campsite. Indigenous peoples long ago noticed that flames had a stronger effect on animals than shouts or weapons. The bright light of the campfire blinded nocturnal predators very effectively. The eyes of animals were adapted to darkness and did not tolerate sudden changes in lighting well. This made fire a reliable ally of humans during the dark hours of the day. A predator looking directly at the fire saw only a blinding spot of light in front of it. Its vision lost the ability to distinguish details and movements. A person standing behind the flames remained completely invisible and hidden from the animal. To the animal, it looked like emptiness beyond the light. It did not understand how many people were nearby and where exactly they were standing. This visual deception confused even the most cautious predators. The fire acted as a shield that could not be seen through. This created the effect of a protective screen that could not be overcome by sight. The flames seemed to cut the space in two. The fire became an insurmountable barrier separating two worlds, humans and animals. Even if an animal was nearby, it could not look at the smoldering fire for long. Its eyes would tire, and its movements would become uncertain. This reduced the likelihood of a sudden attack. Thus, the fire worked all night without human intervention. Small signal fires were often kept burning at the edges of the camp. They were positioned so that they could be seen from the forest. These fires disoriented predators and prevented them from understanding the actual size of the camp. From the outside, it seemed as if the camp was much larger than it actually was. This created the illusion of the presence of many active people. For animals, this meant high risk and possible danger. Animals perceived light as a sign of wakefulness. They believed that people were awake and ready to defend themselves. Therefore, most predators preferred not to attack. In addition, the animals were afraid of traps. They understood that threats could be hidden behind the bright light. The shadows behind the fire seemed dangerous and unpredictable to them. This increased their fear and forced them to retreat. A special technique involved the use of reflectors made from pieces of bark or stones. These simple objects enhanced the effect of the fire. They directed the light towards the forest and changed its direction. As a result, long, moving shadows appeared around the camp. For a bear, such lighting effects looked strange and unnatural. It could not understand the source of the danger. The unknown frightened animals more than an obvious threat. A bear could cope with a human, but not with something it did not understand. Light and shadows disrupted its familiar picture of the world. Therefore, even large predators preferred not to take risks. They left without approaching the camp. Humans used this behavior to their advantage. Thus, fire became an instrument of psychological pressure. Sleeping people always positioned themselves so that they were in the thick shade of their shelter. Their bodies were not visible from the forest. At the same time, the fire was always between them and any possible threat. This arrangement was crucial. Any attempt by an animal to approach forced it into the light. It lost the advantage of stealth. In the light, the predator became visible and vulnerable. Its movements could be easily tracked. This made the animal an easy target for the camp's defenders. Even the mere presence of a person with a weapon was enough. The animal understood that it was being seen. In most cases, This was enough to make it retreat. Fire gave people time and control. Fire served as a kind of boundary that predators rarely crossed. It marked human territory. It was a simple and understandable means of zoning the wild space. A safe zone formed around the camp. Knowledge of the properties of light allowed Native Americans to feel like masters of the night forest. They did not fight nature, but used its laws. People understood how animals' vision worked. They knew what predators feared. This knowledge was passed down from generation to generation. This is how the culture of nighttime safety was formed. The Indians controlled the element of fire consciously and carefully. They did not allow the flames to get out of control. Everything was done for one purpose: to secure the right to rest and sleep. Even small fires at temporary camps were lit according to ancient rules. These rules were always followed, regardless of the circumstances. It was important not to let the fire smoke too much in the direction of those who were sleeping. Smoke could interfere with rest and cause coughing. Therefore, its direction was carefully controlled. The fire was placed taking into account the wind and the terrain. The smoke was deliberately directed towards the forest. It created an additional barrier of smell. For animals, the human smell was an alarm signal. It was double protection, both visual and olfactory. Light and smell worked together. They enhanced the effect of human presence. Predators could sense it from afar. The Indians knew which herbs to add to the fire to create bright sparks. These sparks appeared suddenly and sharply. They resembled the movement of a living creature. Such flashes frightened curious coyotes in the darkness of night. The animals could not predict when the next spark would appear. This kept them in constant tension. Visual contact with fire was always stressful for an animal. It disrupted their usual perception of space. Any mistake could cost the animal its life. Humans consciously exploited this stress. They did not engage in direct combat. Fire did all the work for them. This made their temporary forest dwellings safe. But have you ever wondered how they coped with the terrible weather? In the next chapter, you will learn the secrets of Native American survival in severe blizzards. I will tell you how snow became their most reliable ally. In the harsh conditions of the North, snow became the main building material for effective protection. Deep snowdrifts served as an excellent heat insulator and a reliable barrier against the cold wind. The Indians built temporary shelters, literally burying themselves in deep snow for the night. This allowed them to keep the heat of the human body inside a small enclosed chamber. The snow wall perfectly absorbed all sounds coming from inside and outside the shelter. This made a person's sleep virtually silent to all the forest predators around. The snow hid a person's heat signature, making them invisible to sensitive noses. The Indians of the North turned the cold into a tool for their invisible presence in the forest. When building such snow shelters, the entrance was always located below floor level. This was done so that heavy warm air would not escape outside. From a safety standpoint, it was a brilliant solution against forest animals. The narrow opening was very easy to block from the inside with a heavy bag or branches. It was extremely difficult for a predator to detect a person under a thick and dense layer of snow, especially if the person did not light a fire that could give away their location. Such snow dens saved thousands of lives during long winter migrations. People could sleep in warmth while hungry winter wolves howled outside. To protect against very large animals, the walls of the shelter could be specially doused with water. In severe frost, the water instantly turned into a strong ice shell on the outside. This layer of ice was almost impossible to bite through or break with a bear's claws. The person was inside an impregnable ice capsule for the whole long night. Creating such protection took time, but it guaranteed a peaceful sleep in the taiga. Inside such shelters, the bedding was made of several layers of thick spruce branches. The needles not only insulated the body from the frozen ground, but also repelled insects. The smell of pine needles helped mask the human scent, blending in with the general smell of the forest. The Indians of the northern regions perfected the art of winter sleep over the centuries. Even in the strongest blizzards, they found ways to remain completely safe. Snow not only provided them with reliable shelter, but also important tactical invisibility. It was a survival strategy based on a deep understanding of the laws of ice physics. Understanding the properties of snow allowed them to explore territories that were considered uninhabitable. They were not afraid of the cold, but used it as a natural shield against enemies. Ice walls were stronger than any tree in the fight against the fangs of a predator. For the Indians of the subarctic, winter was a time of silence and safe, secure sleep. Bears usually slept at this time of year, but wolves became more dangerous. Snow shelters made encounters with wolf packs virtually impossible for a lone hunter. The hunter became part of the landscape, blending in with the endless, white expanses of his land. It was the highest degree of human adaptation to extreme environmental conditions. The Indians passed on their knowledge of building such shelters through playful forms of learning. From an early age, children learned to build small copies of ice houses for practice. This ensured that in the future, every warrior would be able to protect himself. Knowledge of survival techniques was the most valuable legacy in every northern tribe. What if I showed you a time machine in the form of ancient forest technology? The tribes of the dense forests of the Northeast often used height to protect their nighttime sleep. Raising the sleeping area above the ground dramatically reduced the chances of encountering a bear. Predators on the ground lost the ability to suddenly attack a sleeping and defenseless person. In the forests of the Iroquois, longhouses had special raised platforms for communal sleeping. These platforms were located along the walls and were at a considerable height above the floor. This solution protected people from dampness and created an additional protective barrier. Heavy objects were often stored under the platforms to prevent predators from getting close to people. The height gave the sleeping person precious seconds to wake up in time. Any noise below was immediately detected and analyzed by an experienced hunter of the tribe. For temporary camps in the forest, light platforms were often built from branches. They were tied with strong ropes to the trunks of several large and sturdy trees. Such an airy platform allowed them to feel any vibrations of the tree when someone tried to climb it. The trunk served as a natural resonator, transmitting the slightest vibrations upward to the sleeping person. It was a simple but very effective early warning system. The hunter woke up before the animal had time to cover half the distance to him. Being at a height also helped to better disperse the smell of the human body in the air. Air currents at a height of several meters are much more active than at ground level. It was much more difficult for predators below to pick up a clear trail and identify their target. This deprived them of the opportunity to prepare for a precise jump from the thick shadows. The Indians used the vertical space of the forest as effectively as the horizontal. For them, a tree was not just a resource, but a reliable and wise ally. Height was a symbol of safety in a world where claws ruled the earth. It was a way to get out of the food chain, at least while sleeping. Even small platforms for children were built with special attention to the reliability of the fastenings. The safety of the younger generation was a top priority for all adult members of the tribe. The Iroquois knew how to create entire hanging cities for the temporary accommodation of hunting parties. This allowed them to control vast forest areas with minimal risk. Trees with smooth bark were chosen, as it was difficult for predators to climb them. Alternatively, the lower branches were deliberately cut off to create a smooth and impregnable trunk. This made the camp resemble a forest fortress on natural and sturdy columns. The Indians knew which trees were the strongest and most resistant to strong gusts of wind. But have you ever wondered how Native Americans used basic habits for protection? In the next chapter, you will learn about camp discipline and how it saved lives. I will reveal the secrets of night watches and rules for storing food in the forest. For Native Americans, personal safety always began with strict camp discipline. From early childhood, future warriors and hunters were taught to sleep very lightly. There were strict unspoken rules in the camp prohibiting any unnecessary noise after sunset. This allowed every member of the tribe to hear any rustling outside the circle of teepees. Special attention was always paid to the proper and safe storage of fresh food supplies. Meat was never left inside sleeping quarters so as not to attract nocturnal predators. It was hung on very high poles away from the tribe's main dwellings. The Indians understood that the smell of food was the main reason bears were interested in humans. Cleanliness around the camp was an absolute guarantee that large animals would pass by. Any food scraps were carefully destroyed or buried in deep pits in the forest. Discipline in this matter was observed by all members of the tribe without exception. One irresponsible person could put the lives of all his close relatives at risk. The use of fire at night was also regulated by strict rules of collective safety and security. The campfire was never left unattended by an experienced and vigilant warrior on duty. Guards were always assigned, who replaced each other at regular intervals during the night. These people were the eyes and ears of the tribe while the rest were resting. The ability to maintain concentration in complete silence at night was considered the highest skill of an adult man. Even small children were taught to behave quietly so as not to reveal the location of the camp. This may seem harsh, but in the wild it was the only way. The tribe functioned as a single, coordinated mechanism of defense against any external threats. Solidarity and personal responsibility were more important than any physical barriers or walls. People themselves became part of a living security system, complementing natural barriers with their vigilance. This culture of awareness made the tribes virtually invulnerable to most wild forest animals. The experience of survival was passed down as an essential part of the spiritual heritage of every prairie people. Every evening, the chiefs reminded the young warriors of the importance of vigilance at their posts. A mistake by a sentry could lead to the loss of valuable property or even human lives. Therefore, only the most trusted and experienced members of the military community were assigned to guard duty. Discipline was the glue that kept the tribe safe for many hundreds of years. Mutual trust within the group allowed people to sleep peacefully, knowing they were protected. No one feared that the guard would fall asleep or show criminal negligence in the forest. This sense of community was a powerful psychological factor that reduced the stress of nighttime threats. The Indians believed that their unity made them stronger than even the largest bear. The rules of conduct in the camp were simple, but compliance was mandatory for everyone. At night, it was forbidden to talk loudly or make sudden movements near the campfires. Any deviation from the norm immediately attracted the attention of those on duty and prompted an investigation. This system of self-control allowed the tribe to live in harmony with the harsh environment. The Indians understood that predators always look for the weak link in their prey's defense. A disciplined camp gave animals no chance to find such a vulnerability at night. The beasts sensed the organized force and preferred to avoid such places forever. Thus, discipline became an invisible but very strong shield for the entire people. The Indians always carried reliable means of defense in case their defenses were breached. A sharp knife or heavy tomahawk always lay next to each sleeping warrior. Access to these weapons was instantaneous, even in the deepest sleep. These were tools of last resort, giving a person confidence in any dangerous situation. The presence of weapons allowed hunters to remain calm, which was necessary for proper rest and recovery. Special sturdy leather bracers and leggings were also an important element of personal protection. Thick bison leather could reliably protect against accidental wolf bites or claw scratches. This passive armor was often not removed even when sleeping in the forest. Such equipment significantly increased the chances of survival in direct physical contact with a predator. The Indians preferred to be prepared for the worst-case scenario while hoping for the best. In addition to cold weapons, various sound repellents made from bird bones were also actively used. The sharp and very loud sound of the whistle could completely stun the animal for a moment. This gave a person the time they needed to get to their feet and fight back. Bears, for example, are extremely sensitive to sharp and unusual metallic sounds in the forest. Even a simple blow of a knife against a metal pot could cause the animal to retreat immediately. It was psychological warfare, where the winner was the one who acted faster and more decisively. Knowledge of the anatomy of various animals allowed the Indians to strike accurately even in the dark. They studied the habits of animals for years and knew all their most vulnerable spots. This made them extremely dangerous opponents for any predator in open combat. However, the main task of a warrior was always to completely avoid direct confrontation with an animal. Weapons were only the final and necessary touch in the overall picture of the tribe's nighttime safety. Interaction with predators was always based on a balance of mutual respect and fear. Animals remembered that humans could be deadly, and this memory remained. This created a stable balance of power between the two worlds, humans and wild animals. Young warriors trained in quickly drawing a knife from its sheath in the dark. This exercise was perfected to the point of complete automatism over many months of hard training. The ability to act in conditions of limited visibility was a vital skill in the forest. The Indians did not rely on luck, they relied only on their excellent training. Every item in the teepee had its own specific place for quick retrieval. A hunter could find his weapon with his eyes closed in a fraction of a second. This order saved time in critical situations when every second counted. The culture of handling weapons was part of the general education of every man in the tribe. Sometimes weapons were deliberately placed under the head at night for extra security and control. This helped to feel the object and be confident in its complete safety and accessibility. The Indians valued their tools of defense and treated them with great respect. A good knife was not just a thing, but a faithful companion in the struggle for life. As a result, a complex set of measures, from scents to weapons, created a reliable security perimeter. A sleeping Indian was not a defenseless victim in the eyes of the forest predators of that time. He was a strong and prepared fighter who had simply closed his eyes temporarily. This awareness kept bears and wolves at a respectful distance from the camps. Dogs were not just pets, but full-fledged members of the tribe's security system. Their role went far beyond that of ordinary neighbors to humans. They were perceived as living guards on whom the safety of the camp directly depended. These animals possessed a unique ability to sense the slightest vibrations of the earth beneath their paws at night. They could detect footsteps and movements long before humans could hear anything. This made them indispensable in open plains and dense forests. At night, the dogs were distributed around the perimeter of the camp, creating a reliable living chain of sensors. They lay or sat in predetermined locations. Every part of the camp was under their watchful eye. Their low growl was the first warning to the sentries of the approach of a forest beast. The sound was quiet but distinct. It allowed people to react calmly, without panic or fuss. For centuries, the Indians had selected dogs with the most developed protective instincts and keen sense of smell. This selection was the result of long experience in survival. Weak and timid animals were simply not suitable for living with the tribe. These dogs not only warned of danger, but could also engage in combat. They did not retreat at the first sign of threat. Their courage often stopped predators before they even began their attack. The dogs often worked in pairs. One would bark or growl to attract attention. The second would move toward the threat, checking the source of the danger. This symbiosis was honed over thousands of years of living together in the dangerous wild prairies. People understood the habits of dogs, and dogs sensed the mood of people. This mutual understanding was formed over many years. In the cold winter months, dogs helped keep sleeping people warm with their body heat. They lay down next to children and the elderly. Their fur and warmth saved them from hypothermia on harsh nights. The presence of dogs inside shelters provided additional psychological comfort for women and children. People felt protected. Even their sleep became deeper and more peaceful. The dogs also destroyed any small food scraps that could attract large predators. They left no smells that could give away the camp's location. This reduced the risk of dangerous animals visiting at night. Thus, they served as both guards and sanitation workers for the camp. Their usefulness was felt constantly. Without them, the tribe's life would have been much more anxious. The Indians understood the complex language of their dogs and could easily determine the nature of an approaching threat. They distinguished between intonations, pauses, and sound intensity. This knowledge was part of everyday life. A short bark usually meant that a stranger had appeared near the tribe's camp. This allowed them to prepare for the encounter. Often, such signals prevented conflicts. A long, drawn-out howl signaled the presence of a very large and dangerous animal. In such cases, the camp immediately sprang into action. Warriors took up arms, and children took cover. This communication system was incredibly accurate. It was developed over years of observation. Thanks to it, people were able to respond to threats as appropriately as possible. Without the help of dogs, exploring the Great Plains would have been a much riskier undertaking. The spaces were vast, and there were plenty of dangers. Humans could not be everywhere at once. Animal helpers provided round-the-clock monitoring of the territory around all dwellings and wigwams. Even while sleeping, the camp remained protected. This gave the tribe a huge advantage. This was an example of how humans use the talents of other species for survival. The alliance was mutual and honest. Dogs received care and food, and humans received safety. Dogs became indispensable companions to Native Americans on their endless journey through the wildlands. They walked side by side, generation after generation. This alliance was tested by time and danger. Each dog in the tribe had its own name and was a source of pride for its owner. They were treated with respect. The loss of a dog was perceived as a personal tragedy. They were carefully cared for and fed the best pieces of meat obtained from hunting. Dogs were never hungry. Their health was considered important for the entire community. The Indians believed that dogs had a special connection with the world of guardian spirits. Their behavior was often interpreted as signs and warnings. This strengthened the trust in animals. This spiritual connection made them even more valuable protectors in the eyes of the entire people. Dogs became part of myths and rituals. Their role went beyond their usual usefulness. The training of young dogs began at an early age. Experienced warriors and hunters supervised this process. They passed on knowledge accumulated over decades. The dogs were taught not to bark without reason and to always remain at their posts at night. Self-control was a key skill. The safety of the entire group depended on it. The discipline of the dogs was as important as the discipline of the people in the camp. One mistake could cost many lives. Therefore, training was strict. A poorly trained dog could reveal the group's location at the most inopportune moment. This was especially dangerous in hostile territories. Therefore, training was taken seriously. At night, the warriors listened to the breathing of their dogs lying at the entrance to the teepee. This sound was familiar and reassuring. It replaced any watchtowers. The animals' calm breathing meant that everything was completely quiet and peaceful within a mile. People could continue sleeping. This trust was based on experience. In the legends of many tribes, dogs occupy an honorable place as saviors of the human race from darkness. Their image is associated with protection and loyalty. These stories were passed down orally. Legends emphasize the importance of the alliance between the two species in the struggle for existence. They taught respect for animals. This alliance was considered sacred. The dog was the first creature to come to the aid of humans in their struggle against predators. It shared their fear in the cold of the night. Together they survived. To this day, this ancient union remains one of the strongest in history. It began in ancient times, and its significance has not been lost to this day. The final and most important element of safety was the incredibly developed intuition of Native Americans. Living in constant contact with nature sharpened all their senses to the limit. They believed that the earth itself warns those who are ready to listen to its quiet voice. This understanding of the rhythms of the world allowed them to avoid most dangerous situations in the forest. Before going to sleep, hunters often performed a ritual to tune into the energy of their surroundings. This helped them shake off fatigue and enter a state of active sleep at night. In this state, a person's consciousness remains alert and ready for immediate action. Many Native Americans could sense a predator's gaze on them, even through the walls of their teepee. They perceived bears and wolves as wise teachers, not just enemies. There were strict taboos that could not be broken in order to maintain spiritual balance and peace. For example, it was forbidden to show disrespect for nature or kill animals without extreme necessity. Following these rules gave Native Americans a deep inner confidence that they were protected from harm. The culture of legends and myths served as an excellent safety guide for the tribe's youth. Through the stories of their elders, children learned all about the habits and tricks of forest animals. This knowledge was passed down for centuries, forming invaluable collective experience of survival in all conditions. For them, safety was not a set of actions, but a conscious way of thinking and living. The Indians created a unique system based on knowledge, discipline, and sincere respect for life. Their methods still amaze researchers with their simplicity and logic. It was a true art of living in harmony with the world, not in struggle with it. Man became an integral part of nature, accepting its laws and enjoying its protection. Every evening before bedtime, the head of the family would make his rounds, checking all levels of defense. He would listen to the sounds of the wind and the rustling of the grass, searching for hidden signs. His intuition told him how peaceful the coming night would be for his loved ones. It was a deep sense of responsibility combined with the ancient wisdom of his ancestors. The spiritual connection with totem animals also served as a psychological shield for the warrior. He believed that his guardian spirit would warn him of danger before any sensor could. This belief gave him the peace of mind he needed to recover his strength after a hard day's work. A calm person acts much more effectively in battle than one who is overcome by panic. The Indians knew that fear was the first thing predators felt. Therefore, they cultivated composure and confidence in their abilities in any encounter. The ability to look an animal in the eye and not look away was an important lesson in survival. Psychological resilience was their most powerful and secret weapon against the wild. Interacting with the spirit world helped them feel at home anywhere on the prairie. They were not strangers in the forest. They were its rightful and full-fledged masters. The forest revealed its secrets to them and provided them with shelter in exchange for respect. It was an honest agreement between man and the great and wise nature that created him. As we conclude our story, we see that Native Americans were masters of a comprehensive approach to survival. They combined physical protection, social discipline, and spiritual practice into a single whole. This experience reminds us of the importance of returning to our roots and understanding the laws of the world around us. Their legacy is a lesson in wisdom that is still relevant in our technological age. The methods of Native Americans show us that safety does not always mean high walls. Sometimes a deep understanding of nature, attention to detail, and respect for those who live nearby are enough. These ancient survival techniques force us to take a fresh look at our relationship with the world. We can learn a lot from people who slept peacefully among wild animals. Which of the defense strategies described above did you find most unusual or effective today? Perhaps you have used some of these techniques yourself during your trips to the forest? Write about it in the comments. It is very important for us to know your personal opinion on the subject. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue our exploration of the history of the great tribes.